Hello everybody and welcome back to the Sammy Snake Racing YouTube channel. My name's Sam, aka Sammy Snake, aka the fastest snake in the world. And in today's video, we're going to find out whether I've just blown 50 quid on the Coach Dave Telemetry application for absolutely no reason. Yes, that's right. I've spent £50 of my own money to test out whether this application is a worthwhile investment. I've seen a lot of content creators and YouTubers, streamers claiming that this is a good piece of software and it can really help you get faster at the game. But I'm always a little bit skeptical, as I'm sure you are, when somebody who perhaps has a financial reward dangled in front of them for telling you that something is good, whether that's genuine. I'm not saying that anybody's lying, but it's just human nature. So I'm totally impartial. There's no working relationship with Coach Dave. I'm going to test it out for myself. And where I'm going to test this out is around Monza with no chicane, one of the latest time trials that's just come out, and the old school Porsche, the Group 1 962C 1988 version. And we're going to see whether I can improve my lap time. Now, my lap time was pretty decent. It was a 1:24.9-ish, which was, I believe, top 20 in the world, but it was still 7/10 off the fastest time in the world. I tried the familiar method of watching a replay, checking where they're braking, checking what gears they're in, looking at their inputs to try and spot what it was that I was doing wrong, but I was really struggling to be able to find 7/10 worth of time. So we're going to have a look at my replay, my lap, do a side-by-side comparison with the P1 time in the world, and then look at the data that Coach Dave shows us, and then have a go at improving that lap time once we've assessed what the data is telling us. And at the end of this video, I will give you an honest and truthful review, an opinion of whether I think that this is worthwhile, and if it is worthwhile, whether it's certain player bases, whether it's the upper tier, the lower tier, but either way, it's going to be interesting to see what the results are. So let's jump in and see what we can find out. Okay, so what I've done, I've set up both my lap, the fastest snake in the world, on the left, and De Bruyn's lap on the right, which is currently the world record. And I want to do this exercise because I want you to see how similar they both look next to each other. They're pretty much on the same braking points visually when you look at them, and the apex speeds don't seem to differ massively. Similar gears, I think, pretty much all the way around. I think the only time where De Bruyn uses a different gear is this second right-hander here. He uses second gear to help get the car to rotate. But overall, I really struggled to see any big differences, and considering this lap time is only, less than 90 seconds, the fact that there was 7/10 time difference by the time we got to the finish line, it highlights to me that something is definitely quite different, because 7/10 is a huge margin of time. So I'm hoping by looking at the Coach Dave Telemetry app, we're going to be able to see what those subtle differences are, see where I'm losing time, and hopefully gain a little bit of knowledge to hit the track and find where those discrepancies are. Okay, we're now in the Coach Dave app. We have loaded my lap time that I recorded in a session, but what I've also done, I've watched the replay of De Bruyn and recorded that in Coach Dave, downloaded it and loaded it as a reference against this 24.9. So what we're going to be able to see is how the deltas compare, where we're losing the time, what the braking inputs are, what the gears are. This is the delta, this purple is the time. You see we lose 7/10 over the course of the lap. This is the speed. These are the throttle inputs. That's the braking inputs. That's the brakes, the gears, RPM of the engine, fuel. You can look at your fuel usage if we're not in time trial and we're doing a race review. And then these are the type pressures and tyre temperatures. The yellow line is De Bruyn's lap, and the blue and red line, blue, red and green is my lap. And first thing I notice is the tyre temperatures seem to be lower and the tyre pressures seem to be lower in De Bruyn's lap. Perhaps that is because this lap was done on the third lap, and perhaps it's more optimal for the tyres to be a little bit cooler, which is interesting. So let's review where we're going wrong. So the first time loss we have, we're a little bit down, we're 30 thousandths down coming into the first braking zone, so he must be a little bit faster down the straight. But let's have a look at this first corner. You can see De Bruyn's carrying more speed in. He's carrying a significant portion of more speed. I can't see the exact number for some reason, it's cutting it off. Looks like almost 20 kilometers an hour though, around that corner. He's braking much later. He's trailing off a little bit more smoothly, but the main thing is the throttle inputs. So if you look here, I will zoom it. I will zoom into this section because this is very important. So as we're coming into that first corner, and you can see as we're going along this line, you can see where the car is on the circuit at the top. I get on the accelerator before that apex. I'm already thinking about trying to come out of that corner quickly. So I get on the accelerator, then I realise I've not quite got it lined up. I have to lift off a little bit, and then I get on the accelerator again smoothly up to 100%. Then at the next apex I have to lift off, and then I'm trying to get straight back on it, but I'm smoothly applying it. But what De Bruyn does is he's completely off the accelerator while he's turning into that corner. He waits till he's past that apex, nice and straight in a straight line, applies the throttle straight up to 100%, and then lifts off as he needs the car to turn in at the apex of the corner, and then accelerates again. And all of that just from coasting into the corner, getting a better line and being up to 100% throttle inputs, back off it, and then back up to 100% throttle inputs quicker. That results in a time gain of 0.3, which is very significant. So let's review the next couple of corners, these two right-handers. We'll see, let's look at the time loss in total. So coming into that corner with 3.5 tenths, just under 3.5 tenths. Coming out of the corner, it's over 4.5 tenths. So there's a full tenth, a full tenth lost. And what De Bruyn's doing is carrying more speed into this right-hander and more speed into the second right-hander. So if we look at the braking inputs, the first corner I'm braking sooner. I'm going up to a higher braking input, 92% compared to 79%. I'm trailing off. And then throttle inputs, quite similar. Because I braked a little bit too hard, I have to get back on the accelerator to try and maintain apex speed. And then I'm back on the accelerator, but not as aggressively as De Bruyn. Not much time lost in that first sector, but that is probably just from braking a tiny bit earlier and a tiny bit harder. We don't actually lose that much on the first right-hander, it's the second right-hander. So the second right-hander, you can see I'm braking earlier, and you can see the delta going up. I've lost time there. De Bruyn actually changes to second, I keep it in third, and then I'm on the accelerator sooner but more smoothly. And I think I maintain the exit speed, so it's all on entry. What I think this is telling me is that I need to brake later and use second gear for rotation, which is interesting information. You can see there we go to second gear. Now let's zoom out and go to the next portion of the lap, the S's. So again, zoom into this section and see what's going on. Looks like I'm actually going a little bit faster coming into this corner for some reason, but he carries more speed going around the apex and maintains more speed through the S's. So This is quite peculiar because I'm braking sooner, but it showed that I was carrying more speed in. Not sure why that is. But I hold the brakes for longer. I get the car to a slower speed before turning in. And I think this is all on entry. The gear changes and the throttle inputs are very similarly matched. That's a slight gear change difference. But you can see they're fairly well matched on the throttle applications. This is more the entry to this corner and the line. If we zoom in, I don't think that there's pretty much, it's exactly the same line. It's hard actually to take a different line. Slight difference in line there. But it's more carrying the speed into the corner, which is very tricky to do, but at least we can see what's happening and where that time loss is. So now let's move to the final corner. So coming into this final corner, we're 6.5 tenths behind. We'll zoom in and see what's happening. Again, same story, more speed into the corner and then maintains the same speed on the way out. Well, in fact, actually, I'm maybe gaining a little bit of time on the way out. So again, I brake sooner, I brake longer at 100%, and then I'm not trailing off. You can see how smoothly De Bruin is coming off the brakes. So that allows him to brake later, carry more speed into the corner, and then not lose. He does lose a little bit of exit speed, but he's carried so much more time. If we look at the time, it goes from 6.5 tenths to 7.5 tenths. He's gained a tenth there, and because of his great trail braking, he's actually managed to find a pretty good line and get on the accelerator fairly early, and he only loses less than half a tenth on the way out. But that's all the braking. That's all the braking and the corner entries. So, okay, valuable information. Let's head to track with what we've learned and see if we can improve on this 24.964. Okay, so this was the fastest lap of my session. I think it was about 40 retries and stints that I had to do before setting this lap. You can see we've already set a 24.716, but what I did and what I'm going to do, I loaded the ghost of De Bruin's time, but we're not going to analyse the delta of De Bruin's lap. We're going to analyse the delta against my previous lap, because we want to see how much of an improvement we made compared to our previous lap, and see whether Coach Dave has helped us to do that. Now we've isolated where we were losing time. Now on this particular lap, I used third gear, and I used third gear through that chicane as I found it was faster for me. I could stay closer to De Bruin. I had more control of the car. It would save on a gear change coming out of that corner, as changing gear in this car can really slow you down. And these first couple of sectors, even though the first one's just flat out, was really good. My best sector. But I didn't feel like I particularly nailed the next two sectors. These S's, felt like I shaved a little bit too much speed off the corner and didn't carry a lot of momentum through it. So I'm really intrigued to see how this compares to my previous 124.9. But it was a really good lap. I'm happy with it. It is incredibly difficult to emulate what was happening in the delta that we saw with De Bruin, but it definitely helped me to shave a few tenths off my lap time down to a 124.6. Okay, so here we are. We're back in Coach Dave. We've got the 124.9 loaded, but what we're actually comparing against it now is the 24.696 that we've just watched. Now, just bear in mind that the delta is going to show where the 24.6 is moving ahead. So when it goes into the red like that, that you've got to bear in mind that is the 24.6 gaining time on the 24.9. So let's review. We're actually 20 thousandths behind coming into the first braking zone, but then coming out of the corner, we're 230 thousandths up. So let's have a look. We are braking a tiny bit later, and the throttle inputs were staying off them for longer. I'm coasting into that corner, but remember we used third gear coming through this corner, so it obviously won't be the same as second gear. And I believe by staying on that throttle longer, you can see the yellow line is the 24.6. That is what resulted in the time gain. So bearing in mind we were 20 thousandths behind, by the time we come to the next braking zone, we've gained 2.5 tenths, which is, that's huge, to be honest, in one corner. So that's where we've gained the time. We're braking a tiny bit later, so gained some time there. But it's mainly down to the throttle application, letting it coast into the corner, getting the line better and being more aggressive and carrying more speed on the way out, and you can see that in the delta. So let's move on to these two right-handers after the chicane. So coming into this corner, we're 230 thousandths up. Coming out, we're about 300. I think we gain a tenth. By the time you get down the straight, because we are coming out faster, that's probably a full tenth that we've gained. So let's see, coming around this first corner, it's pretty much exactly the same, 230 thousandths. Let's see how they compare. Very, very similar, slightly earlier on the brakes on the 24.6, but trailing off sooner. Throttle inputs, very, very similar. We're basically on the brakes earlier on the 24.6, and then on the accelerator, which very, very, very close, and that's why it's exactly the same time when you come out. I don't think there was much we needed to do with that corner, so I don't want to focus too heavily there. Looks like the time gain was through here, so we're on the brakes slightly later on 24.6. Remember, that is the yellow line. We're trailing off in a very similar fashion, but the throttle inputs, again, quite similar, but we're up to a higher percentage of throttle sooner. And I think the main difference with that corner, to be honest, was using second gear. You can see that spike. Second gear, to help slow the car down and rotate. I think by using second gear, you can see, yeah, we kept it in third there, but using second gear, it helps to rotate it, and that is where the time gain was. So second gear really is worthwhile using there. That's very interesting. So let's move on to these S's. This is where I think the second half of the lap was a little bit slower. So coming on 330 thousandths up, which is a full tenth, like I guessed it would be by the time that we'd come through the second right-hander and carried the extra speed. Looks like we lose a little bit of time coming through the S's. So let's see what happens. Yellow line, we're carrying less speed in. We're with a lower apex speed here, lower entry speed here. The braking a little bit sooner than what we'd done previously. I think, to be honest, I got nervous. The first two sectors were so good that I didn't want to mess this up, and I bottled it. And I broke earlier. I trail off a little bit better, but then the throttle applications they're more aggressive to begin with, but then I have to lift off. Now the throttle applications are actually a little bit better. It was all on the entry, because we can see the time go down, or what was it, 330. So we're losing time, remember, when that delta goes down. So we lose time. We've lost a tenth. 1/10 we're down, but then I think the exit must be better. It was all on the entry and the line perhaps. So yeah, we're actually gaining a little bit of time on the exit. Let's now move on to the last corner. We were 314. So we've lost maybe 20,000 through the S's. Let's review this final corner. 314. That goes up to 380, which is good. I believe we must be carrying a little bit more speed in, but then on the way out our exit speed isn't as good and we lose time. So we've lost almost a full tenth on the second, combined with the S's and the final corner in comparison to the 24.9. So let's look at what we're doing wrong. We are braking later on the yellow line. We have broke later, but we're not started trailing off in the same fashion that De Bruin was. So we're on the brakes a little bit longer. We maybe need to lift off the brakes a little bit better, get it to rotate, and therefore that affected the exit speed because we didn't get the entry line right. But you can see the difference in the line here. This is really interesting. So the yellow line is 24.6, the green line is the 24.9, and you can see we're going a little bit wider. I think I carried too much speed in and I was slightly missing the apex, and the green line was a really optimal line for that exit. That's interesting to see. That's a good feature, and that explains the time loss on exit, which you'll see translate. It goes down. Yep, there we have it. Okay, so that is what we've learned. I think the first two sectors were really good. The second two sectors, not so much. Or the second sector, I'm not sure whether it's 1 or 2. So perhaps we could do a 24.5 if we went back and strung it all together, but that is very difficult to do. So there we have it. Do I think 50 quid was money well spent in order to find 2 to 3 tenths on a lap time? Yes, I do actually. I think that those 2 or 3 tenths would have been very difficult to find using other means. And considering it was only £50 for the year, which I think is very fairly priced, I think I'm going to get more than my money's worth over the next 12 months by using this. There is also other options of subscribing monthly, which is £10 to £12. So I think that this is very fairly priced, and for myself personally, I'm going to get a lot out of it. I hope that it will help me evolve as a driver, learn what I'm not quite doing right, what I can improve on, and give me the right areas of what I need to practice to improve as a driver. But with saying that, would I recommend it to the average player? I'm not sure. So what I would say is, unless you have a high level of skill and precision and you've pretty much almost mastered your trail braking, your trail throttling, and consistently get in the top 100 times on the leaderboard on pretty much every time trial event, then I don't expect a lot. It is very difficult to have the level of skill and precision and also be able to read the data in the telemetry to know exactly what it is that you need to improve on. Take the example of the first chicane in Monza, which we reviewed and analysed there. It looked as though, oh, I'm just braking late and I'm not going as fast through it. But really, when you look deeper and you understand how that car works, it was, yes, brake a little bit later, but stay off the throttle, get it to rotate, because you know when it coasts and you're off both the throttle and the brake, it will turn better. Then you get the line right, then you apply the throttle. So you need to have a quite deep understanding of how the car works, how sim racing works, to be able to read that data, know what you need to do, and then have the precision and the skill to be able to execute that. So be wary. If you do choose to download this and use it, don't think it's going to be a secret magic formula and all of a sudden you're going to be way faster. You still need to nail the fundamentals. But that's my conclusion. So if you enjoyed today's video and you found it entertaining, informative, or even if you just disliked it, do me a favor, hit the like button anyway, and leave a comment below of what you'd like to see on the channel in the future. But from the Racing Snake, it's over and out. Take care, and thanks for watching.